faster than I thought.
Go longer than that.
Went a little faster than what I thought. Michael Jaafar is here with us. We can bring him in to talk about what we're expecting so far in this trial. Michael, nice to see you. Do you think that Robert Tellis will end up testifying?
You know, it's fraught with peril. I mean, he should testify, but at the same time, he's got a lot of baggage. He's going to probably open the door to a bunch of stuff, including the domestic violence past, his suicide. I mean, there's a lot of things that could come out. But his defense attorney has said that his client has been consistent that he wants to testify. That's why I think he's going to testify. I mean, his defense attorney last week when he was interviewed outside of the courthouse said, well, hey, you know, I was only hired for this trial, guys. He defended himself for a while, and when I took him on as a client, he was very consistent with me. He said, I have to testify. Also, we know that Robert Tellis is a politician who likes to talk. So maybe he just wants to get up on the stand and tell his story. Sometimes politicians cannot get out of their own way. They cannot stop talking, right? And so this is an opportunity for him to talk and have the whole world see him, right? I think he's going to testify for all of the above reasons. Do I think he should testify? I don't know, but he's pretty smooth. He knows how to talk. Again, the politician thing cuts against you, but cuts in your favor in some things. So he's got the raw tools needed to talk, to testify, to be eloquent. So I do think he's going to testify for all of it. I've just convinced myself right now he's going to testify.
Oh, yeah. We've seen how he acts at the defense table. There's just something about his demeanor when his attorney is talking, when a witness is on the stand, or it seems like he just wants to be involved. And don't forget, you say politicians love to talk. He's also a lawyer. Lawyers love to talk. So it's probably going to be difficult for his attorneys to keep him off the stand. But tell me this, Michael, how do you think he will address this incident that happened after the stabbing death of Jeff Gehrman, where Robert Tellis is barricaded inside of a room? He won't come out. SWAT has to get involved. He's tried to explain this away in interviews, but I think on the stand, being cross-examined about that, is this consciousness of guilt?
He had his O.J. Simpson moment. He's already addressed, I think we have a preview as to how he's going to address it. He's already told people, my life has fallen apart. I'd lost my bed. People are blaming me for it. Me. I'm the victim here. And so I wanted to kill myself. I wanted to shut the whole world off. And we all know that the jurors who came to sit on this case, you know, already know all this stuff. They've been online. They've researched all this stuff, so they know that he has a guilty conscience. But he's gonna explain it the way he's explained it so far, which is his life had fallen apart. He wanted to kill himself. He wanted to take his own life. The evidence was pointed against him. He's already given them a preview, right? He's told them, I've been framed. Right, that's the only way to explain the DNA evidence and the cut-up straw hat and the shoes and everything basically tucked away in his house. So we know he's gonna address it. I think his defense attorney is going to bring it up right away. I think his defense attorney is going to bring it up on direct examination. I don't think he's going to wait for the prosecution to cross-examine him on it. So I think he's given us a preview as to what he's going to do, what he's going to say. You mentioned the fact that he's an attorney. He's an attorney and a politician. He's got both negative things. Everybody knows that the two most reviled human beings in American culture are lawyers and politicians. It's a tie. I always tell people, if I'm ever indicted for stealing a rock from the moon, I'll take a plea.
Michael, you know, we have some surveillance video that we want to play for you, and then we're going to get your take on the other side. It's kind of talking about Robert Tellis. Let's play that, and we'll talk about it.
When you see those images first released of the suspect walking around, does that catch your attention?
Yes,
Why?
It does. With the way that, I mean, just in the photos itself, and the likeliness of the photos and of Mr. Tellis were really, really close.
Is it just photos, or is there a video that you're seeing this person walk? In the videos released by the police, did you see the videos too?
Yes.
So you see this suspect walking. What are you thinking at that point?
That was on a Friday.
Okay.
And I'm like, boy, that really, it's like, boy, that really looks like somebody I know.
Okay, and who's the person you're thinking of?
I was thinking of Mr. Tellis.
Okay, was there anything else aside from the walk that caught your attention? When you looked at the videos of that person?
The gait and you know, Mr. Tellis would always wear a certain kind of Nike that was very unique to me.
Okay, so
Maybe I'm a little bit fashionista, but like the Nikes that you'd find like at Marshall's or Ross, where they replaced the leather with like a plastic almost, and the hard plastic. It just, they're cheap Nikes you always wore.
Michael, I don't know if you saw Tellis's face as the witness was testifying. He's looking at him like, what are you talking about, the Nikes? You could just see his demeanor there. What are your takeaways from this testimony?
Kelly, I hated that testimony and I hated that witness. And I know that they had to bring it in because that guy called Crime Stoppers, but I still don't believe that that testimony should have been admitted. I thought that that deprived the defendant of justice. Just think about it. This was not only outrageous hearsay, but it was just straight up gossip, right? It was just straight up gossip. Again, I know that rationally, because that witness called Crime Stoppers, they could bring it in, but I don't think it was fair. I don't think it was just. I don't think it, if you just think about it, the guy looked like Robert Tellis because of his gait. Give me a break, right? Give me a break. I was disgusted by that testimony. I hated that witness. I hope the jury did too. And when Draskevich came up to cross-examine him, he shredded him. He said, "Isn't it true that you were sour with Robert Tellis because he had a bad, you had a bad business deal? He cut your commission. He did all these things, which was in line with his brand of cutting people for corruption later on when he became a public administrator." Just think about it. Just imagine you're on trial for your life, and a witness is admitted who says, yeah, that looked like him. And the testimony was admitted. Yeah, it looked like him. Like, give me a break. He had literally no insight. I mean, Robert Tellis is not the only person who has a limp or a gait or who wears Nikes. Last time I checked, Nike sells shoes to people more than Robert Tellis. That was very, very, very disgusting to me. I hated that. That gave our whole entire ecosystem a black eye to even allow testimony like that in.
Well, I will say they did have the corroborating witness, the other real estate agent who came in to confirm. She didn't have the issue with Robert Tellis like her colleague did, but it's part of the state's case, and now we're getting close to the state's case wrapping up.
Talk about what we just heard from the jurors in this case. All right, Michael, 3 questions. Number 1 and number 2 seems like not much there. Number 1, he's saying that was just he misspoke about that. The second one, they already have the evidence as well as the crime scene, the evidence package and the crime scene photos, so they're going to have to find those. But I wanted to ask you about the third one, the judge not allowing the indictment to go back. I'm wondering if this kind of goes back to what defense counsel said in closing, talking about the dates. The state needs to prove the dates, the times in which this took place, and the state didn't prove that. That's according to defense counsel.
Yeah, judges never want to explain indictments to juries, and they never want to explain evidence to juries. That they can't. They don't want to explain pretty much anything to juries. They want to just show you the evidence as they see it, and they want you to make your own decision. I was a little bit puzzled by that because the juries seem to just be asking for some clarification. These are laymen, right? These are not lawyers. These are just, barbers and, plumbers and people down the street. So, I was a little bit puzzled by that. But yeah, I rarely seen a judge sit down and converse with juries when they have questions. They just say, here's the evidence, make a decision. You analyze it, interpret it as you will. Some judges actually get very snarky with juries. They take it far. But to me, it seems par for the course.
Michael, I gotta ask the question, the elephant in the room. What is taking them so long in a case like this? Her frozen body was found inside of his home, under the bed. A co-conspirator came in and talked about her own abuse at his hands and told everything about what he had done. And a co-worker said that he acknowledged he's got 2 girlfriends at home, one of them being the victim. Where's the problem? Why are we hung up on indictments and language?
By the way, when we came back from this break and you announced it as, well, the jury is in hour 7 point something in deliberation, I was like, wow, crazy, right? I don't know. I mean, maybe they're taking this reasonable doubt thing very, very, very seriously. In the prior show, Jack Rice was saying, "Hey, did the state prove their case? Do you have any doubt whatsoever?" I mean, maybe they're taking that. Maybe they were watching the show and they saw Jack Rice say that, because they're taking this reasonable doubt thing really seriously. If you really sit back and think about it, right? If this jury was comprised of robots, not human beings, the robots would be processing the following information. Dishman was pointing the finger at Finnegan, but Dishman's in jail and she hates Finnegan, and Finnegan was pointing the finger at Dishman, right? They were both pointing their finger at one another. If robots were analyzing this case, that sounds like reasonable doubt to me. One of them is telling the truth, and one of them is lying. Let's just say we live in a universe, just for a second, Julia, in a universe where Finnegan is right, where Dishman actually did this whole thing, and Finnegan was this, paltry poor guy trying to help a homeless prostitute, and he just got caught up in Dishman's manipulation, right? Let's just say that's the universe we live in. Is Finnegan guilty? I don't think so. If we live in that universe, it doesn't seem reasonable or even rational that that's what happened, right? But a robot would think, well, that's reasonable doubt, right? Maybe that's what it is. I would have never said this on air before they went to deliberation. If you asked me yesterday, I would have told you they're going to come back with a verdict of guilty in 20 minutes, right? Maybe an hour to make it sound a little bit more dramatic. Well, 7 hours does puzzle me. I'll be straight up with you. It's puzzling to me. What other explanation is there other than they're hung up on reasonable doubt? Or maybe there's one juror, right? Maybe there's just one juror hung up on that, and maybe the other 11 jurors have already agreed, and they're yelling at that juror. Maybe that's why you saw the jury question to the judge. Maybe it's the 11 jurors trying to convince the one holdout that, hey, you're kind of being stupid. So that's my answer. That's the best guess I can conjure up.
I think it's a good guess.
Yeah.
Because defense counsel really did emphasize reasonable doubt. Defense counsels always do that in cases. But here he really talked about it, that high burden the state has to meet. Maybe one of the jurors is hung up on that, as Michael said.
And this jury is sequestered.
Yeah.
So if you think that there's any motivation for them to get this done, it would be they haven't been home in many days.
Still with us, national trial attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, talking about this case now, okay, they still need to positively identify the remains here. And obviously you can prosecute a case without a body, but obviously that changes things when you do have a body.
Yeah, if these remains are identified towards her, I don't think he has a defense at that point. Any semblance of a defense just deteriorates. He's being held over there in Flint. That's where Lenawee County is, and so he this case right here has captivated the public, right? And so people are looking at this case, and they're because of the 5 kids, right? And because of the fact there's billboards everywhere of this disappearance, right? This woman was a public, she was involved in her community. People respected her. For these remains to be found on his property is completely changes the case. He's fighting it. He's been consistent. I didn't do this. I had nothing to do with this, but there's already enough circumstantial evidence to show that he did it before they even found these remains. Again, I'm going to reserve judgment until these remains are identified. But if the remains are identified and they're as hers, they're found on his property, what other defense does he have? This is a woman, from my analysis of this case, she didn't have enemies. She was not a gambler. She was not a drug dealer. She did not, she was not a politician. She had no reason to disappear, right? She was just a mom. So I'm going to reserve judgment until we see the identity of these remains. But if they're hers, I don't even think a plea will even be offered for this guy. He's being charged with murder 1. I don't see how a plea would be even offered.
Yeah, if it's confirmed, this is a huge break for the prosecution, for investigators in this case, and of course, some semblance of movement and justice for the loved ones of Dee Warner. Michael Jaafar, stand by. We have to get to a break, but still ahead. Again, this hearing was from back in July, so now we are expecting to hear from a judge today on this issue. Let's bring back in national trial attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, could you first just help us remember the difference between competency and insanity? Not the same thing, but there are steps to getting a person evaluated, and there's also steps to make sure they're not just malingering, not trying to beat the competency test or beat the insanity evaluation.
Yeah, big difference, massive differences, right? Obviously, insanity is a mental health issue. Competency is something different. This is a 14-year-old kid, right? It's not a 14-year-old kid today. It was a 14-year-old at the time that this happened. So if competency is not relevant for her, it's not relevant for anybody. I mean, what do you get, a competency of a 2-year-old kid? Give me a break. I've hated this case since day one. The fact that they're charging her with murder 1, obviously, and also the attempted murder of her stepfather. She's 14 years old, right? It doesn't excuse what she did, but there's a process, there's a system for this. She's the definition of a juvenile, right? This is in Mississippi. So, for competency, you have to go through whether or not the person appreciates not only not the wrongfulness of their conduct, but understands the proceedings, understands the law, understands why they're being charged, understands what the process is. Again, because this is a kid, right? This competency sometimes is relevant for adults as well, because there are people who, have a learning disability, who are not competent to stand trial, who don't understand, don't appreciate what the system is. Competency is different than insanity. Insanity is more for people dealing with schizophrenia, bipolar, delusions, different types of things. Obviously, that is mainly reserved for adults, but competency is for all spectrum of ages, right? But mainly for children, right? You see competency a lot in these states where they try to test the limits of trying somebody as a juvenile. Some states I've seen try a kid, as an adult who commits a murder when they're 12. I don't recall if I've ever seen one where they've successfully done it, but they do it. There are victims who call the prosecution, call the state and say, this is an adult, she's a bad kid, try her, she knows what she was doing. But competency becomes a factor. Again, it can happen with adults as well. It's less known, less common. It's more common for people who are under the ages of, I would say 16, 15, right? That's where you see competency evaluations succeed. Never succeed for anyone who's 17 or older ever. I don't think it's even tried. Once in a while for a 16-year-old, but anyone 15 and younger, competency becomes relevant. It's obviously very relevant here for the obvious reasons.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for your take on this.